I'm the monster because you tried to kill me, suck my soul out of me, erase me, poison me, tried to frame me, set me up. You attacked my mind, body, soul, business, finances. You tried to break me, and when you couldn't end me, you lied, tried to get people on your side, made up a fake narrative designed to corner me and shame me into compliance. But it backfired on you when I became the monster you made me. Now I'm the narcissist and the monster that turned the tables on you. I didn't become the monster by choice. I became it because staying unarmed psychologically was no longer survivable. Time for the ultimate revenge. I'm the monster. I became the narcissist you made no mercy. No hero. This is the villain speaking. You didn't break me. You built me. Let's get one thing straight. I didn't wake up one morning and decide to become heartless. I didn't choose detachment. I didn't choose coldness. I didn't choose the monster. You engineered it. You trained it. You shaped it. You summoned it. Every lie, every guilt trip, every silent treatment, every manipulation, every broken promise, every moment you made me question my worth. Those were the bricks. I just learned how to build with them. You want the truth? You didn't destroy me. You drafted the blueprint for the version of me that can no longer be destroyed. This audiobook isn't about healing. It's about evolution through fire. It's about becoming so untouchable that even your memory can't scratch me anymore. You didn't turn me into a narcissist. You turned me into someone who refuses to bleed for people who sharpen their teeth when they smell vulnerability. You feared the thought of me being a monster? You wanted a monster? You made one. Only continue if you proved your worth and readiness. If you haven't subscribed as proof of your commitment to yourself and me, then stop now and subscribe and like and lock in. If not, stop and leave. If you don't show a commitment to yourself now by following a simple yet powerful symbolic metaphor, then you're not ready to rebuild yourself and transform, and you're not ready for this, and this wasn't made for you. If you already subscribed and liked the video, you're in the right place at the right time, and this is meant for you, and you will get what you're looking for. I did the same thing and went through the same challenges and damage. We're doing this together. Let's fucking go. Chapter 1. The first crack. When you taught me my feelings were optional. I didn't become cold because I wanted to. I became cold because warmth was used against me. You taught me emotion, leverage, vulnerability, exposure, honesty, ammunition, love, a bargaining chip, empathy, weakness. There's a moment in every person's story where they realize, my feelings aren't safe here. That was the day the first crack appeared in who I used to be. You didn't notice it. You were too busy needing attention, needing chaos, needing a reaction. But that crack was the beginning of my rebirth. You didn't break me. You activated me. Chapter 2. The manipulation that taught me how to see through everything. Manipulation doesn't destroy smart people. It trains them. Every time you twisted the narrative, every time you played the victim while being the villain, every time you made me feel guilty for things you caused, I learned. I learned patterns. I learned human behavior. I learned emotional tells. I learned how control works. I learned how lies are crafted. You didn't confuse me. You educated me. Eventually, I could read your intentions before you spoke. I saw the shift in your tone before the lie came. I saw the self-pity loading behind your eyes before you played it. I saw the gaslighting coming a mile away. You thought you were conditioning me to obey, but you were conditioning me to evolve. Chapter 3. The death of empathy. A survival response, not a personality flaw. People love saying, they changed, they became cold. No, I adapted. Empathy didn't die because I lacked it. It died because you drained it. Empathy becomes dangerous when it's given to someone who uses it as a weapon. At some point, I realized, you didn't want understanding, you wanted compliance, you didn't want communication, you wanted control, you didn't want love, you wanted dominance. So my empathy shut down, not as an attack, but as self-defense. Once empathy turns off, it doesn't come back the same. It comes back with boundaries. It comes back with requirements. It comes back with protection protocols. And if a person can't meet them, they don't get access. You taught me that. Chapter 4. The moment I realized you loved my weakness, not me. This was the turning point. You never loved my strength. You loved my dependence. You loved my devotion. You loved my softness. Not because it was beautiful, but because it made me easy to control. You loved the version of me that apologized first, the version that feared losing you, the version that over-explained, the version that tolerated disrespect, the version that mistook chaos for passion. You loved the version of me that needed you. But when that version began to die, so did your power. You didn't lose me. You lost the weaker version of me that made you feel superior. That version is gone forever. Chapter 5. Detachment. The final shift you never saw coming. People think detachment is a lack of love. Wrong. Detachment is the end of fear. Fear of losing you. Fear of upsetting you. Fear of being abandoned by you. Fear of being misunderstood. Fear of being alone. Once fear dies, detachment is automatic. You cannot control someone who is no longer afraid of walking away. The day I detached, everything inside you panicked. Your tactics stopped working. Your game stopped landing. Your chaos stopped moving me. You didn't recognize the version of me who wouldn't break. That's because you only knew the version you damaged. The monster was simply the version of me that refused to die. Chapter 6. Silence. The weapon you accidentally taught me to master. You used silence to punish me, to confuse me, to destabilize me, to make me chase you, to make me apologize for things I didn't do. That silence once controlled me, until it didn't. Here's what you never understood. Silence is only a weapon until the other person learns how to wield it. Your silence trained me. Now, mine destroys you. My silence isn't an absence of words. It's the presence of power. My silence says, I don't need your validation. I'm no longer affected by your moods. You no longer control my reactions. There's nothing left to talk about. I've already moved past the version of me you could influence. You created a monster whose silence is louder than your voice. And silence from someone who used to bleed for you is unforgettable. Chapter 7. Self-focus. The trait you called selfishness because you couldn't control it. Let's be real. You never wanted me to love myself. You wanted me to love you enough that I'd neglect myself. Every time I tried to focus on my goals, you accused me of being distant. Every time I needed space, you claimed I was abandoning you. Every time I set a boundary, you called me cold. Every time I chose myself, you tried to make me feel like the villain. But self-focus wasn't narcissism. It was recovery. It was the reclamation of a self I had sacrificed to keep you comfortable. The monster was born the moment I realized I cannot heal you and myself at the same time, and only one of us cares if I survive. Self-focus is not selfishness. It's self-resurrection. You didn't lose me because I changed. You lost me because I stopped dying for you. Chapter 8. Emotional armor. The skin you forced me to grow. Armor isn't built. It's grown. It grows over wounds that never heal properly. It grows over trust that was repeatedly broken. It grows over love that was used as leverage. It grows over softness that was exploited. It grows over apologies you weaponized. It grows over boundaries you ignored. The monster you see today is not cruel, and the monster is armored. And you forged every plate of that armor, every lie, every shift of blame, every guilt trip, every emotional disappearance, every moment of chaos, every unfair accusation. Every time you acted like the victim after hurting me, armor doesn't make me dangerous. Armor makes me immune to the very tactics you used to rely on. You can't pierce what you built. Chapter 9. The shift in power. When you could no longer read me. There was a time when you could predict my reactions. You knew exactly which buttons to push. You knew what hurt me. You knew what scared me. You knew how to twist my emotions. You knew how to keep me chasing, explaining, hoping. You don't anymore. Because monsters don't communicate in the language of their creators. You expect anger, but get neutrality, jealousy, but get indifference, emotional collapse, but get silence, fear, but get calm, desperation, but get distance, explanations, but get nothing. You lost control the moment I stopped giving you emotional data to feed on. You cannot manipulate someone who is no longer emotionally accessible. You cannot guilt a person whose conscience you exhausted. You cannot confuse a person who sees through your patterns. And you cannot hurt a person who rebuilt themselves around the wound. The monster became unpredictable because I stopped performing the script you wrote for me. Chapter 10. The exact moment you lost me. This is the part you never understood. You think I left because of the final argument, the final betrayal, the final broken promise, the final lie. But that was just the moment the door closed. The moment you truly lost me was silent. It was the moment I realized, you will never be the person I believed you were. That realization kills something permanent inside a person. After that, everything changes. You may still see the old behaviors for a while. The same tone, the same care, the same presence. But something essential has already died. And once it dies, the relationship becomes a ghost. You lost me the moment I saw you clearly, the moment I saw your patterns, the moment I saw your intentions, the moment I saw you weren't evolving, the moment I saw you enjoyed the power imbalance. You lost me the moment I realized you were more invested in controlling me than loving me. After that, the monster wasn't born. The monster was freed. Chapter 11. The birth of indifference, the most terrifying transformation of all. You feared my anger. You feared my tears. You feared my disappointment. You feared my emotional reactions. But you were never prepared for my indifference. Indifference is not coldness. Indifference is closure. Indifference is the emotional equivalent of death. It says, you no longer matter enough to hurt me. You cannot argue with indifference. You cannot guilt indifference. You cannot provoke indifference. You cannot threaten indifference. Indifference is the end of the story. It is the moment the monster stops fighting the past and turns completely toward the future. The monster does not hate you. The monster does not love you. The monster does not care. And that is what breaks you, not the loss of me. The loss of the version of me who cared enough to be affected. You didn't just lose me, you lost your power. Chapter 12. When you realized I no longer feared losing you. Everything changed the moment you sensed it. The shift, the stillness, the calm in my voice, the flatness in my eyes, the way my energy no longer bent toward you. You felt it. That moment when you knew, they don't fear losing me anymore. It terrified you, because your entire control depended on my fear. Fear of abandonment, fear of disappointing you, fear of being alone, fear of conflict, fear of losing the relationship. But once that fear evaporated, your entire system collapsed. Because the thing you never understood was, I wasn't afraid of losing you. I was afraid of losing the version of myself that loved you. Once that version died, there was nothing left for me to lose. And a person with nothing left to lose is a person you can never control again. That was the beginning of the end. Not of us, but of your power. Chapter 13. You saw my growth as insubordination. You didn't want me to evolve. You wanted me to stay predictable. So when I started growing internally, when I became emotionally steady, mentally strong, unreactive, focused, self-assured, you panicked. Because my growth did the one thing you never expected. It exposed what you never developed in yourself. Growth is intimidating to those who rely on your stagnation. Every step I took toward self-respect felt like rebellion to you. You mistook my healing for hostility. You mistook my boundaries for disrespect. You mistook my independence for ego. You mistook my self-worth for narcissism. Let me clarify. I didn't become arrogant. I became unavailable to the version of you that needed me weak. Your discomfort was a confession. You didn't want a partner. You wanted a subordinate. But I wasn't growing to defy you. I was growing to leave you. Chapter 14. When I became the one you could not read. You used to be able to predict me. You knew how I'd react. You knew how to trigger guilt. You knew how to twist my empathy. You knew how to pull me back in. You knew what words would destabilize me. But then I became unreadable, emotionally neutral, psychologically opaque, energetically unavailable. You tried to interpret my silence, but silence has no tells. You tried to provoke emotion, but I had none left for you. You tried to decode my distance, but my distance wasn't a message. It was a boundary. You tried to figure out what I was thinking, but people only reveal their thoughts when they still trust the audience. You lost access, and without access, you lost control. You didn't just lose the old me, you lost your advantage. Because now, you're guessing, you're strategizing, you're spiraling. You're replaying every memory trying to figure out where your leverage went. Here's the truth. Your leverage vanished when my self-worth returned. Chapter 15. When you realized you could no longer manipulate me. Let's list the things that stopped working. Your guilt trips? Dead. Your emotional storms? Silent to me. Your jealousy games? Invisible. Your triangulation attempts? Predictable. Your I guess you don't care lines? Unconvincing. Your threats to leave? Encouraging. Your silent treatments? Peaceful. Your inconsistency? Irrelevant. Your withholding affection? Unnoticed. Everything you used to use as psychological leverage became meaningless because I evolved past the emotional level where your tactics could function. You can't manipulate someone who sees through every move. You can't control someone who no longer reacts. You can't confuse someone who trusts themselves more than your version of the story. Manipulation only works on people who don't know their own power yet. I know mine now. Thanks to you. Chapter 16. The moment you realized you needed me more than I ever needed you. This was the final reversal. You always believed I needed you more. That's why you felt safe mistreating me. That's why you gambled with my emotions. That's why you made reckless assumptions about my loyalty. That's why you took advantage of my consistency. But when the monster emerged, you finally saw it. You needed the old me far more than I ever needed you. You needed someone to adore you, someone to forgive you, someone to stabilize you, someone to absorb your guilt, someone to blame, someone to validate you, someone to come back every time, someone to carry the emotional weight, someone to keep the story going, someone to allow your chaos to exist. When that version of me died, you lost your emotional supply. You lost your safety net. You lost your emotional cushion. You lost the version of me. You could hurt without consequences. You didn't just lose me. You lost the person who made your flaws bearable. And now you feel the void you assumed I'd always fill. But monsters don't return to the hands that crafted them. Chapter 17. The shift from victim to judge. Here's the part you never expected. I stopped being the emotional victim the moment I became the observer. I watched you. I analyzed you. I mapped your patterns. I decoded your motives. I recognized your cycles. I understood your wounds. I identified your triggers. I studied your behavior, You trained me so well that I became an expert in your psychology. And the moment I understood you, truly understood you, I stopped loving you. Because you cannot love what you see clearly. You can only love what you project meaning onto. Once clarity replaced projection, my heart detached completely. And in that detachment, my power returned. You weren't dealing with the wounded version anymore. You were standing in front of the final form, the judge of the story, not the victim of it. Chapter 18. The day I stopped needing to be understood. Once, I would have done anything to make you understand. My intentions, my heart, my pain, my perspective, my loyalty, my love, my confusion. But monsters don't explain themselves. Explanation is a request for validation. Explanation is a plea to be seen. Explanation is an emotional negotiation. I negotiated with you until I realized understanding is impossible when the person you're talking to benefits from misunderstanding you. You needed to twist my words. You needed to distort my intentions. You needed to cast yourself as the victim. You needed to invalidate my feelings. Understanding wasn't the goal. Control was. So I stopped explaining. That's when the monster took full shape. Because once a person stops explaining, they stop needing approval. They stop needing closure. They stop needing the past to make sense. They walk forward, with or without you. Chapter 19. When my peace started to offend you. My chaos used to benefit you. It kept me reactive. It kept me emotional. It kept me trying. It kept me attached. It kept me chasing. But when I found peace, real, internal, unshakable peace, you became uncomfortable. Because peace is what exposes people who thrive in disorder. Peace is the mirror that reveals the truth. It was never me. It was always you. When I became calm, you became erratic. When I became still, you became loud. When I stopped engaging in the cycle, you spun harder. When I stopped reacting, you escalated. When I stopped feeding the fire, you realized the flames you blamed on me were always yours. My peace became your panic. Because my peace proved I was never the problem. You were. And the monster? The monster is simply the version of me who refuses to be dragged back into your storm. Chapter 20. The final shift. You started chasing the version of me that no longer exists. When you saw I was gone, something in you snapped. You didn't chase me when you had me, but you chased the loss of me. You chased the attention, the control, the influence, the ego, boost, the emotional cushion, the version of me that put you first, the version of me that apologized, the version of me that tolerated everything, the version of me that doubted myself, the version of me that needed your approval. You chased a ghost. Because the person you're trying to get back died the day I realized you liked them broken. You're not chasing me. You're chasing your old power. And you will never have it again, because that version of me is never coming back. Chapter 21. Why you call me a monster. Now, you don't call me a monster because I became cruel. You call me a monster because I stopped allowing manipulation. I stopped accepting excuses. I stopped explaining myself. I stopped prioritizing you. I stopped reacting to guilt. I stopped rescuing you. I stopped trying to fix what you broke. I stopped tolerating disrespect. I stopped needing your validation. I stopped being predictable. I stopped being available. I stopped being controllable. You call me a monster because your old tactics no longer work. You call me a monster because I grew beyond the reach of your influence. You call me a monster because the person who once held up your emotional world no longer participates in the illusion. You call me a monster because I finally became someone you cannot defeat. And that's the truth. The monster isn't evil. The monster is immune. Chapter 22. The true end of the story. You created the monster, but I perfected it. There's a critical distinction you will never admit. You created the initial transformation, but I refined it, sharpened it, directed it, owned it. You created the wound. I created the wisdom. You created the coldness. I created the discipline. You created the detachment. I created the peace. You created the armor. I created the identity. You created the monster. I turned the monster into my evolution. This is the part you'll never accept. I'm better because of what you did. Not because you meant it that way, but because I refused to stay broken. You don't get credit for my strength. You don't get credit for my clarity. You don't get credit for my boundaries. You don't get credit for my emotional intelligence. You created the damage. I built the empire. Chapter 23. The monster doesn't want revenge. The monster wants nothing. You expected revenge. You expected bitterness. You expected anger. You expected obsession. You expected emotional fire. But monsters don't burn the world down. Monsters walk away. Why? Because revenge means I'm still attached. Revenge means you still matter. Revenge means I'm still invested. Revenge means your actions still influence my direction. But the monster wants nothing. Nothing from you. Nothing from your apology. Nothing from your guilt. Nothing from your regret. Nothing from your wounds. Nothing from your stories. Nothing from your future. Nothing. Wanting nothing is the final act of power. Chapter 24. The final message you will never hear from me if I could say one final thing. Not for healing, not for reconciliation, not for closure. But as the monster you made speaking the truth you tried to bury, it would be this. I didn't become the monster because of what you did to me. I became the monster because of what I refused to let you do again. You didn't lose me. You lost the version of me your manipulation depended on. You lost my softness, my patience, my hope in you, my belief in your potential, my willingness to fight, my fear of losing you, my desire to fix what you broke. You didn't lose the monster. You lost the human behind it, and that human is never coming back. Because the monster isn't a mask. The monster is the rebirth. Chapter 25. The real ending. I walk away, and I evolve beyond recognition. This is where the story finally ends, not with screaming, not with begging, not with a dramatic final fight, not with some cinematic heartbreak scene. It ends quietly, cleanly, decisively, unemotionally. I leave, not as revenge, not as punishment, not as a performance. I leave because the version of me who stayed no longer exists, and what replaces them no longer fits the world you built. You're not part of my evolution. You're part of my origin story. That's all. I walk away, I rise, I rebuild, I become someone you never believed I could be. And the monster? The monster becomes the masterpiece.